This is My Letter to the World by Emily Dickinson is a lyric written in two quatrains or four-line verses arranged in alternating lines of 8 or 6 iambic syllables. The uncomplicated syllabic and rhyme schemes of common meter allowed Dickinson to showcase the power of language without distraction. The poem rhymes in the second and fourth lines of each stanza with words that share a common long E sound, including a repeated me, and there are other echoing E sounds throughout. The letter in the first line is a written message, quite possibly meaning this poem or a whole body of poetic work. The letter is addressed to the world, which could be the planet Earth or the whole natural universe, the reading public or the whole human race. It is not clear which specific meaning is intended here, and it is possible that all these meanings are implied. The letter is unrequited, for the speaker never received any letters from the world. Perhaps this is a metaphor for the experience of the artist who is lonely and misunderstood. If the speaker is writing poetry, perhaps the world or the public has never appreciated the poet's unique talents and creative vision. However, the speaker is not discouraged. Even if the communication in only one direction, it still continues. The speaker humbly stresses the simplicity of the news or new information contained in the writing. The speaker goes on to claim that the letter's contents were inspired by tender majesty or delicate power of nature itself, and not by the author's will alone. If the speaker is an artist, then this statement is in keeping with the philosophy that art is an imitation or celebration of the natural world, and that the artist's will has less to do with the creative process than the powers of creation itself. In other words, nature and the whole of creation speak through the artist's work. This surrender of power can be seen both positively and negatively, for it can mean that the speaker accepts the role of a godhead in all human creativity, or it can mean that the speaker is afraid to take responsibility and risk misunderstanding and ridicule. In the first line of the second quatrain, the pronoun her refers to nature, in this case perhaps Mother Nature. The poem's speaker has captured nature's message in poetry, and that message is committed or delivered for safekeeping to hands that the speaker will never meet. Here, hands is an example of a figure of speech called synecdoche, for the whole future generation of possible readers is represented by their hands alone. This letter is the speaker's legacy to posterity, and it is a great act of faith to leave one's art to the care of dangers. The poem ends with the speaker's pleading to sweet countrymen or future readers for a compassionate understanding of the letter to the world. The speaker makes this appeal in the name of nature itself, as it is nature who is the inspiration behind the work. This request is almost pitiful, for it seems to predict a potentially negative reaction from the readers. It asks the reader to think of the speaker's predicament and to show mercy accordingly. One of the central themes of this poem is alienation. Many readers agree that the poem seems to be written by a speaker who has waited so long for outside contact, she finally decides to complete the message for herself. The poem, like many found after death, balances a love for solitude with a loneliness for outside contact, or as Dickinson says of herself in another piece, it is a joy to be hidden but a disaster not to be found. During Dickinson's time and still today, the act of writing can be a lonely process. She did not care about being published, a process that involves sending poems out to magazine editor you have never met and waiting months for a response. A majority of her communication with other human beings was done through letters, so it seems a natural metaphor for Dickinson to use in representing her alienation, writing a letter to the world after waiting a whole life for the world to write her first. Unlike Whitman, who populated his poems with many individuals he knew and observed during his lifetime, Dickinson's poem is devoid of individuals. Instead, she writes from a point of view so isolated from her readers, we appear small on her world's horizon, a mass of sweet countrymen. Dickinson, typically awkward with human contact, even seems to diminish her own poetic role as a creator in the poem, referring to herself instead of a kind of journalist reporting the simple news that nature told. Many critics consider the speaker's letter to the world a metaphor or analogy for the role of art itself as a message from poet to reader, dancer to audience, painter to those who stand and gaze with arms crossed. How many times have you heard the question, what is art? A simple but accurate response may be that it is a form of communication between two human beings, or more specifically, an inside person speaking to another inside person. The most powerful art is that which carries an emotion from deep within one person and places it quickly and honestly into another at an equal emotional depth. In this poem, Dickinson imagines the other person, her reader, as hands I cannot see, distant and hidden, but open and waiting nonetheless for the letter. This image of hands may remind us of another of her poems in which she describes writing poetry as spreading wide my narrow hands to gather paradise. These same narrow hands, in turn, carry paradise to us, her anonymous readers.